NC pork, good for the plate, great for the state. Welcome to Time Out here on the North Carolina Sports Network. I'm Mike Waddell, and my background is that I spent years as an athletic director and senior administrator in college athletics. I started out as a broadcaster, but I moved on to being an administrator, just like the father of my guest today here on Time Out, Kerry Keating. His father, Larry, was the athletic director at Seton Hall and also later a senior administrator at Kansas. But what we've decided to do today, instead of just talking about the Sweet 16 and the matchups coming up Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to see who goes on to Indianapolis, we decided today to take a timeout, literally, and just talk about what it's like right now to be a coach in this era of college basketball, or really any era of college basketball, and what it's like to be under fire. And right now, Hubert Davis, as we speak, is still the basketball coach at the University of North Carolina, and he walked out of the Bon Secours Arena in Greenville following Thursday's round of 64 loss, thinking that he was going to be the long-term head coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels, his alma mater, and where he's been both an assistant coach and now the head coach for the last 5 years. But Kerry Keating, man, something went down between the end of that game on Thursday all the way until where we are right now, to where this has exploded into being an absolutely world-class exhibition of wow.
I go back to when Twitter started, and I remember when I became a head coach in 2007, 2008 is probably about the time that it had started, and all the coaches at that time were worried about exposing their program in ways that had never been exposed. And coaches didn't know if they should ban it from the players being able to use it. They put guidance and guardrails up for how they could use it. And then it towed a line between being a part of the team and then being an individual and having what's now become a social media presence. It's become every part of the fabric of how we deal with our everyday lives nowadays. And some good and mostly bad, but everywhere in between, it's hard to stay away with it unless it's an intentional choice. So what that's done, Mike, is it's opened up talk radio times a million. Most of us in the generation of our 40s, 50s, 60s, we grew up on talk radio, and maybe you had a chance to go on there and spat off about how you felt really about your favorite team or this coach or this player. And now it just happens in milliseconds. It's already happened. As soon as we talk now, 5 or 6 things, the noise becomes even louder, and it becomes even more imperative from a college basketball standpoint that you insulate yourself in ways that are not shutting yourself out from your fan base and your supporters and your alumni and your potential recruits now, and the transfer portal, if you will, the visibility of your program, but just so you can really control that narrative, as they like to say, and not in a way that you have to go out and set up your own presence socially or video-wise to tell the story, but what you present your product to be needs to really be buttoned up. And I think there's a lot to unpack here as it relates to Carolina. I got the Carolina hat on for a reason. I wanted to go to school at Carolina. I ended up going to Seton Hall and staying home. I remember coming down and visiting with Coach Williams and thinking this was going to be the place I could start my coaching career. I was just a Carolina fan growing up, get up in the Northeast, and for obvious reasons. And I went to Archbishop Malloy, right behind Kenny Smith, went with Kenny Anderson. There was connections that I had there. And it just, look, when you're growing up and teams are winning, back then, when you're not watching them all the time, but you hear about the Yankees, UCLA, Carolina, unless you have loyalty in a regional sense up in New York to St. My current company, Layup, was born out of a relationship that I have with a former Carolina player in Buzz Peterson. Because when Hubert and Buzz were talking about how to structure a front office a year and a half ago, I had the conversation with Buzz that maybe there's some different way to look at this. So there's connection for me personally in there. And having worked for Buzz for 5 years, understand the intricacies of the Carolina system that Coach Smith put in place and how successful it can be. So given that framework and given where we are now, we really don't know what's going on at Carolina. The only person that knows is Hubert and his boss. And then by an extension, the rest of the staff and the inner workings of the family. But let me ask you this question too, and kind of start a conversation and thought process. Even though there's background in what you might say disappointment in the Carolina faithful for where Hubert's tenure has led so far. Forget how he got there. Forget about the national championship, the seed, how they were a 10 seed, then they became a 9 seed. Like a lot of things. Look, there's ifs and buts, candy and nuts, right? So you can always play that game. But the biggest if in this season, in the day and age of the transfer portal, when you're literally shrinking down the what have you done for me lately to 1 year, if Caleb Wilson doesn't get hurt, this may be a completely different conversation in terms of right now, because there wouldn't be noise about Hubert's future as much as the future of what they're going to do wherever their bracket fell for the Sweet 16, because they were a Sweet 16 potential team with a dynamic player, and now here we are. It's very fascinating to me, and I think a lot of this pressure is coming from down the road, 15-5-1, and the transition that has happened at Duke. It's been a completely different transition. It's inevitable they're going to be matched up against each other in a thought process in terms of parallel programs, given the history, the success, the prestige, everything that comes with Carolina and Duke. I think Carolina's at an inflection point right now that we don't want to dismiss the history of what Carolina is and what the brand is, but it needs to be modernized right now, and it needs to be segmented so that the modernization is able to sustain and last. Look, Coach Williams essentially picked Hubert and was given that autonomy to pick Hubert to coach the team. Why and how is really irrelevant. We have to respect Coach Williams' mindset that he thought Hubert could coach the team. But what's happened, and I'm not sure that Coach Williams could see this in the last 5 years, it's not just coaching the team anymore. It's literally managing a professional organization that has just skyrocketed in the last 2 years, from recruiting high school kids to paying transfers $4 to $5 million a year. Just think about that, like that change and that chasm that just got shrunk down. All of a sudden, it's a different guy. And I don't know if you go back and had the ability to go back 5 years and ask Coach Williams, okay, knowing now, 2026, go back to 2000, whatever it was, 2021, do you think that's the right way to go about it? And are we shooting ourselves in the foot to insulate ourselves to say, you know what, we really need to keep this in the family of Carolina guys? And by the way, Michael, that extended out to like everything about Carolina. So much so that even the times where I was at calling up Dave Nathan and saying, hey, can I come over and just help you out when you're short a guy? Now I need to be a Carolina guy. I'm like, I get it, but it's just, you could see it all just like building and building until the balloon bursts. And that's not an indictment on Dave. That's just how they work over there. It's just a way that it's been successful. It may not be the best way going forward because you have a limited group that you're working from. And to have the success at the very highest level that Carolina's expectation is inside and outside the building, you probably need to be able to at least start to go outside to think about which guys are best for us that are going to be loyal when they're here, regardless of where they were, where they come from, to help Carolina's brand get back to where it needs to be among the elites right now in the country. There's no reason why there should be that much of a drop off. And unfortunately for Hubert being the head coach, he's taking all that heat right now. Michael, as a coach, is so stressful because, and I know some share the sentiment, some don't, but in the end of the day, the feeling in the locker room is still the same. No matter how you got there, you lose your last game. Only one team wins their last game. But I can't remember who brought this up, but I felt like you asked the question, do you love to win or hate to lose? By and large, the competitors that you recruit are going to fit one of those two molds. And not everybody's on the same bucket, but most of them are on the hate to lose. And if you're in the hate to lose, then losing is like dying. It's literally like you do everything you can to win that game in the 40 minutes or whatever more it takes, and you don't do it, and it's you're just gutted because you put everything you had into it to win that game. Now you get towards the heightened awareness of the postseason, and it just gets magnified. There's no decompression time anymore. That's the unfortunate part for Hubert personally is used to have a decompression time in the calendar. It's not that we're saying we don't want to work, but from a mental and physical standpoint, it just gets you and gets you. And if there's no time in the calendar where you know as a coach that nobody else is working or competing so you guys can catch your breath to give your best foot forward towards your program and ultimately all of college basketball, it just compounds in ways that I think are just so mentally draining that I wouldn't be surprised if this had nothing to do other than if Hubert decides that he's not going to coach next year. This is just that he can't mentally capacitate all these things. Now, he could, if now Bubba comes back and says, I still trust you to coach the team, but the way we put the team together and how we support that needs to be a little bit different. Those are conversations we're not privy to that I'm pretty sure we're going to find out about pretty quick.
And you said that we could spiral in any direction, but who's actually in that conversation? You would think Bubba Cunningham, but Bubba Cunningham is done at the end of June, and Steve Newmark has been in place now for the balance of this entire academic year. The former NASCAR executive and William and Mary graduate and UVA Law School graduate grew up in Chapel Hill. He's not averse to the Carolina system, the Carolina way, the myth around Carolina athletics. One of his best friends growing up was the son of former athletics director Dick Bedour. So Steve Newmark is well aware of what the Carolina stuff is, but man, this is not what he bargained for when he came in. He thought, man, I'm going to be work with Bill Belichick and Hubert Davis, and we've got all these great things going on. And now all of a sudden, he's sitting there having to maybe do a basketball search, perhaps down the road sooner than later, do something with football. Oh, and I've got to build a new arena too. And we've not even talked about trying to raise money in an environment that is growing more and more challenging by the day. It's really good. But I want to go back to your experience as a coach, what it feels like to be that guy in the arena right now, because you're the titular head of a basketball program if you're Hubert Davis when you were at Santa Clara as Coach Kerry Keating. Everything sticks to you. Man, everything sticks to you. Do you think that Hubert, in any form of his imagination, went into that arena on Thursday in Greenville and thought that he could come out with his job basically in jeopardy?
You bring up a great point, Michael, is that as the head coach and essentially the CEO and the face of the program outside of your players, you need to wear all those decisions. You need to wear them proudly and be confident in them. And what you don't want to have happen is let those distract you from what really your main job is, which is to coach the team. Like a lot of guys get lost in the sauce here about what they're doing. Some guys are over the top with their social media presence. Some guys are just basketball junkies. And as we learned last night, some guys are born through different avenues to have a chance to get on the biggest stage and then they thrive. A guy like Ben McCollum was at Division II and all of a sudden gets a big chance on the biggest stage against the defending national championship and wins and shows a lot of bark in that while he's doing it. Like everybody's different. The program identity essentially trickles down from the head coach all the way to the bottom. So in everything that you do, and especially when you're at a program like Carolina, look, Coach Smith instilled pillars and standards of how to win at Carolina in the environment that he was in. There was some foresight in that because a lot of those things could last forever. Doesn't mean it's the right way, doesn't mean it's the only way, but it is a way. By and large, Coach Williams carried that over. He carried over first at Kansas in his own right. There are very much a lot of the things that you would see at Carolina with Coach Smith that Coach Williams took to Kansas. And it was a natural transition to come back. On coaching, I remember going through this for the first time and seeing this when Coach Olson left Arizona. When you have a coach, or in Carolina's a little unique, two coaches that make impacts enough to have their names stamped on the grounds in an arena or on the court, two back to back. It's hard enough to replace one. Adrian Autry just learned that lesson with Coach Boeheim up in Syracuse. He never really wanted to be the guy to follow the guy. You wanted to be the guy that follows the guy who followed the guy. Well, think about what's happened in Carolina and take out the one-offs it's worth. In totality, what we're talking about now in this era and what one of them actually did in Coach Williams basically picking Hubert. It's not just replacing one guy. You're replacing two in an entire legacy and history of a program. That weight is even heavier than just having the normal weight of the brand and the colors. And if you don't have the requisite generals in your arsenal to be able to manage the smaller battalions out there, your army's going to splinter. And I think you'll bring this point up too. The inadvertent splintering of the army is also your past. And here's what's happened now is I don't know all of these guys. I didn't coach at Carolina. I know of them. I've met some of them. I've dealt with a few of them in recruiting down the road. But everyone's got a podcast now. Everyone's got a voice. Everyone has their connective tissue. And they all do have loyalty back to Carolina in their own right. Good, bad, or indifferent, however that message gets spread. But the point is, I don't think it's any different in how they feel about the program than, say, Jerry Stackhouse or Rashad Phelps or Derek Phelps or Vince Carter. And I'm thinking back to time, they just have an easier way to be heard. So I think my point in this, Michael, is that the loyalty and the pride that all of the former players have in the program is really strong. Look, there was a clip when Hubert was at practice, and this is the other thing that kind of gets me too, and not to get off on a tangent, but this whole letting the videotape and into the locker room and the huddles and the practice huddles, like I'm using an example. So they had a clip of Coach Davis telling Caleb, because of his accolades, that he gets his number up in the rafters. That's a pretty sacred thing. But your hand is forced that, oh, we can't just put it up there and let it speak for itself. We have to have this production where we create a viral clip that tells them about it. I'm not criticizing that. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it creates so much undue noise that you don't need. If you're letting them into that, everyone's expectation is let me into everything else. You're letting someone into a practice huddle where you're telling one of your best players ever, you're going to put your, and I get there's all feel good moments and you always have the clips of the walk-ons getting scholarships. And look, I'm all about it. I'm not trying to be negative Nancy here. But what I am trying to say is if you're going to open it up like that, then the expectation becomes everything's an open book. So it makes you think in the beginning of your process, how am I going to manage this? What's going to be the line of sacred internal only as opposed to public consumption of how we do things? There is a fine line, and you should do that. Your marketing, your social media, your ability to sell and explain your program has never been easier. But you don't want to make it harder on yourself by letting all these little things happen. And then all of a sudden you step back and go, oh man, we might have done too much.
I'll tell you this. When I worked with Coach Smith from 91 through 94, I was every one of his in-studio radio shows. We didn't do it remote back then. I was with them on a lot of the road trips. It was TV and radio. I was involved with him right there. And you had a reverence about Coach Smith, man. And you didn't just go out to practice. You weren't grabbing a pass and going over there and slumping next to a bleacher and watching. If you watch, you were from the top two rows of the upper deck. And I think that's one of the concerns as I've talked to Carolina lettermen from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. It really is the concern now that this could be a true end of the era, that they're not going to have that familiar face back in the office when they go in there like it was when Coach Smith was there, or when Gut was there, or even when Matt, Roy, or Hubert had been there. It could be a very different thing. And you would expect that to a point. But for Carolina, Kerry, that's been more than just a tagline. They've lived that. The only reason there is a brotherhood at Duke is because the Carolina had the family. Everything begets everything else. And when you were talking earlier, man, you're talking about the pressures of coming from down the road. Now, we have an article on our X account at the NC Sportsnet called Why Duke Wins, and it takes a look inside Duke's really historic run right now of having the women's basketball and the men's basketball tournament championships last year, and then football with Manny Diaz this year, and then back with another men's and women's basketball duo. And it's all because of setup. And one of the things that you do with your sports analytics company, Layup, is that you go in and you help basketball programs accelerate up. It's almost like one of those particle accelerators. Layup helps these coaches save time, become more efficient, and be better communicators because what you're saving them is all of the clutter in between. So really, for North Carolina right now, there is that opportunity to look at everything with a fresh pair of eyes. And it's not just Carolina, but a lot of schools have been left behind in this tech and this intelligence race to try to become truly professional basketball operations more than they ever were before. So I see this as a double-edged sword for Carolina fans out there. They're all saying, man, we want blood, fire them, do this and that and the other. And I just laugh at that sometimes. It's so naive. They don't understand what goes into that. But right now, with a lot of the question marks, new AD, arena challenges, what are we going to do with NIL? Who's going to fund that? Are we really going to have the money to do what we need to do? Because, hey, and I'll say it, and I'm not going to ask Kerry to say it because it's not fair. It's my opinion. Carolina's been notoriously cheap for a long time. Okay. They have a lot of money. Boy, they're bringing in the money, but they didn't necessarily always spend it in the ways that other people were continually innovating. And I think that's the challenge that sometimes all situations, all changes are different in coaching changeovers. But man, it seems like the gap right here could be something that really needs to be paid attention to, because if not, I think people are going to put unrealistic expectations on whomever comes in next, not truly understanding what you can qualify right now is what goes in to a changeover when something like this happens.
The historical respect that the basketball world has for Carolina is extremely strong. As they say, one of the blue blood programs. It's never going to change, but there's a seismic shift happening in college basketball as we speak. It's literally a storm of epic proportions that's changing everything that we ever knew about how college basketball and by and large college athletics is run. It's becoming, and for all intents and purposes, has become a professionalized organization without the structure of how to do that. So that's going to happen. It's going to level out. Eventually, we're going to figure out how to run this right. Collective bargaining, salary caps, so on and so forth. Regulations and rules about where you can go and how, free agency. There's all sorts of things that still have to get fleshed out. But why I'm saying that is because the leveling of any program right now, regardless of its historical context, is really reliant on two things. And before you put the horse in front of the cart, you actually need to get the cart set up right. And the cart is, what are you dealing with in the current environment, regulated or not, that's going to allow you to put a horse in front of this cart to go as fast as possible than everyone else? And what that means metaphorically is, what is your commitment to your salary pool? And this NIL thing is still too vague and too ambiguous and too much of a level set for those that have as opposed to have-nots to get more money for people that need more incentive. Look, not to go on a tangent here, Michael, but we're getting closer to being in a situation where going to class is part of a contract negotiation. Just think about that. Okay. And that's a change from everyone before saying that was the price of admission. You got to go to class, scholarship, not anymore. And I'm not saying they make decisions to not go to class. I'm saying literally, I'm going to play basketball at XYZU and I don't want to go to class. Okay. That doesn't mean you have to. That's coming. The second part, in terms of putting the horse to pull the cart, it doesn't really matter who it is as it relates to where they came from, as long as they understand what the assignment is and able to coach this year. Look, coaches' salaries are more than likely going to start from the beginning lower than they ever have, because ADs and administrators are going to try to have to find out a better balance, because now all of a sudden, now all that money can't go to the coach. It's got to go to the players. It's going to open up a whole world of opportunity for the mid to high mid-major coaches who are making a pretty good living to make more and want to go to a place like Power 4, as opposed to a Power 4 coach who's making 6X and has to take a 2X cut. What? Wait a minute. Why would you do that? And again, to each their own. I think you're going to slowly find a handful of elite level coaches that have handled this at other places that may not be Carolina, that have shown that no matter who's there, they can go get 8 to 9 players in their pool right now, maybe keep some that are here, maybe bring some with no penalty, put a team together that they can coach, that can compete in the ACC and compete at a national level. We don't need to get into who all that is here because we're not trying to speculate on anything other than say this is the way that it's happening. So you may have a lot less long-term contracts. Remember the days where you've been on your side, been on mine. The golden ticket was 6 years. It gave you some cushion to build. I would schedule our team out 4 years and recruit out 6 years, and then do a side-by-side vice versa to see how that would match up to find the sweet spot at your mid-major. This is the time we're going to be really good. And it worked for us almost to the tune of getting closer, but we won 26 games and won the CBI. We came into Cameron, had a lead with 17 minutes in the second half before Coach K told the 3 officials to stop screwing around, and the game was over. But we competed, and we won 26 games that year because that was our 6th year there. And we recruited that as such, and we had a plan, and it worked, and it was going to work until a new AD comes in. That's how it works. New ADs, new arenas. I think to your point about the alumni is a unbelievably strong asset for so many different reasons, other than at the end of the day, and I just went through this a little bit in my own personal way for Santa Clara making the tournament for the first time since Steve Nash was there after I've been out. I was there for 9 years. We had won a CIT, won a CBI. We were building block against the Gonzagas and St. Mary's, and at that time, BYU's, who had a lot more than we did. And my point of the thing is, I was really happy for our players, all of whom graduated, even the ones who left graduated, because at the end of the day, they're still sharing the common bond of that school and that name and that degree, regardless of who the coaches and all that are. And I was happy for them because their school made it. Our school, they made it. My point in that is, like, you can overcome initial disappointment in alumni engagement after that pain of change happens. Doesn't mean you have to go out and get the best possible alum to be your alumni director. You just need to have someone within your office who understands the power of those guys, when and how to bring them back, when to engage with them. And you can engage with them now more than ever before. And I'm not just talking about financially and stuff like that. Remember those times where everyone got side-eyed? Oh, this player talked to that former player. Oh, he can't do that. Not allowed to do that. Like, the kimono was open. And there aren't too many alumni bases in college basketball as strong as Carolina's. I'm sure now with all the technology, and I know that firsthand, we can scrub and search and say, okay, pound for pound, who's got the strongest alumni? I'm talking about finances and pro career. I'm talking about now engagement in the program, being visible, wearing the colors, talking about it, helping out with the youth program, being visible on campus, coming back in the summer, the pickup games at camp. There's so many things going on that Carolina has that Coach Smith started that are never going to go away. How do you embrace them? Because look, the speculation can run rampant, but until Hubert's not the coach anymore, he's the coach. They have to still do that. They have to get right inside to get right outside, right? Because the noise becomes so much that you can't hear yourself think. And right now what we're hearing with all the availability of everyone to have a voice is noise. And what we haven't had happen, and in these cases, oftentimes you have the security of the president and the AD to tell them exactly where you're at structurally and contractually to finally come out and say, this is where we're at. This is what we're doing. This is what my staff's doing. Here's where we're at. Here's our roster. Here's our plan. Like, technically, that's probably what should have been happening with the weekly radio show. So now you start the speculation, and all you're doing is bringing more undue stress.
You talk about just Hubert the person. And I remember being at Clemson last year on a Monday night game where Carolina just got run out the dough. Okay. And watching him come in with his administrator, Clint Waltney, and his wife coming into the postgame, he looked miserable. And I was watching him even on the sidelines in Charlotte at the ACC tournament before the game. And he's just looked fundamentally unhappy. And if there's this one narrative going on right now that Hubert didn't really want the job, that's what Jeff Goodman was saying, and I'm sure he has a good reason for his opinion there. But I will tell you, it certainly is not the job that he accepted that it's evolved into, because the entire world changed. And when people talk about program standards right now, that's another thing that Mike DeCourcy and I were talking about over the weekend. Man, program standards have changed, I think, since the advent of being able to hand somebody a bag of money. okay, and do it legitimately because everybody has opportunities before that perhaps only a few programs had at a certain level prior to. And that's not saying they were doing anything untoward, but it's been the great equalizer in a lot of ways. I think the basketball analogy escapes me for what is in football because when I had football coaches, whether it was at Akron or Cincinnati, when I was the AD at Towson, or later on at Arkansas and Illinois. Man, I tell you, some of the bonuses they got in there were crazy. And for football coaches to sit there and still tell me that winning 7 games was an achievement, when you're playing 12 and you're going one game over 500 or going 7-5 instead of 6-6, that ain't really excellent. You say, but I'm going to a bowl game. 80% of the teams in college football go to a bowl game. And so now it just seems like there are a lot of pressures that are out there on coaches that haven't been there before, man. I really tend to empathize a little bit more with them. And it's just a different world. And I don't think he was really bargaining that the world was going to change as much as it did. And as a result, perhaps he was caught a little bit flat-footed and maybe doing something he really didn't. He had a passion about it because it's Carolina.
3 years into Coach K's tenure and 4 years into Coach Smith's tenure, they both wanted him gone.
Oh, yeah.
Now, again, you're talking about the 60s,
Totally
70s,
different.
80s, but time is. It's still the general sentiment, like this isn't the right guy. So I say that is because now that goes back to the administration. And again, Jeremy Foley hiring Billy Donovan out of Marshall with 500 record after 2 years and not going to the NCAA tournament knew this guy can freaking coach and he gets it. Let me get him into this resource filled environment and watch what happens. So you have to be right on that side. I say this because I was raised by someone who did that and was faced with different pressures in his own right directly to fire his coach at Seton Hall twice. PJ's not the guy. Fire. PJ's not the guy. And like you have to have confidence in yourself as an administrator. And I think you have more tools at your disposal, Michael, as an AD than you ever did before to make sure this is right. And again, I feel like I should change the background to layup right now as much as we talk about it. We created, through the availability of current technology over the last 2 years and even the last 10 years, an ability to fit model people into an environment that they will thrive in. Broadcasters, coaches, players. The low-hanging fruit for us was to do the players because it was such a wide net for all the coaches to need help with that. This really isn't any different for an AD and a coach to say, okay, do I fit there? Does he fit here? Do we fit together? And the only thing that I would say is, and I'll go from my personal experience in this, if you're at a point where you have uncertainty about your future, vis-a-vis, I don't really have a contract that goes past this year or the next year. I'm expendable financially to this institution, whatever it may be. Whether it's the end of this, they're going to run it out, or they're going to take me out after a year and get ahead of this. And maybe this is because I saw the other side of it. And because every single day, and I'm not emphasizing this effect here, every single day that my father left the building at Seton Hall, he stopped in to see PJ without fail, to the point where it's like he wasn't dismissing what was going on at home, but home ain't going to be home if I don't make sure this guy's right. And every day it was the same question. Everything good? What do you need? That's it. And then the conversation can go wherever it would go. And if you didn't have to come home for dinner, they'd go out and eat Bella Italia at 11 o'clock at night, and all's good. We're getting ready to play Georgetown on Friday. Like, from that standpoint and that mentality, and I can only hope from a coach and a former coach and someone who's been through this, if there's one thing that I wished was different and could have changed from that perspective, when that new AD came into Santa Clara, which ended up being my last year at Santa Clara, she knew when she got there I wasn't staying. It didn't even matter what kind of year we had because we had already won 2 championships, graduate every kid. And look, you're not going to be everyone's best friend and people are going to love you, hate you. You're going to have to balance both out. We were always trying to do the right thing. I was taking money out of my pocket to pay my staff in the highest cost of living place in the world or the country in San Jose, which I didn't even know. And I was ignorant when I took the job because I just wanted the job. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted to keep winning. I just wanted to coach. But I literally would have had way more respect. And even if she said, The results are different. You're still gone. Okay, if she came in June, July, August and said, you know what? It's your last year. I'm not going to bring it back after this year. Great. Now I know where I stand. Now I know also how to take care of my staff and make sure that they have a landing place here, there, or someplace else. We're going to coach our asses off throughout the year. We're going to give everything that we got, we promised to those families and those kids. But you know what? It's not our decision anymore. This decision has been made. Instead of hanging in the balance and in the stress of this game and that game and the old deal, just say what you want to do. Then you know where you stand. And you know what? You might reconsider it after the year, knowing that's what you worked on against those pressures, whether it's a sub 500 miracle run that gets you into the NCAA tournament or not. It's irrelevant. You have to have alignment with the head coach and the AD and the president as to exactly what you want out of the program. And the reason why I bring that up is because it's more important today than ever before, because this has literally turned into a season to season, year to year proposition. Like I'm just telling you, you will, in the near future, before this all gets sorted out and now contracts actually come back that make sense for players, for coaches, for transfers, for free agents, to have some sort of normalcy. Whether the coaches ditch that and say, you know what, I can't afford this. I'm going to my AD. I want to build a program with players in our program, 5, 6, 7 guys that are coming as freshmen. I need time to do that. That's your decision. You guys do that. Or are we going to chase this every year because we can? You're going to see coaches potentially leaving 1, 2 years, go someplace else. 1, 2 years, go someplace else because they have to. But there's going to be transparency in the beginning of that to know that could possibly happen from an administration standpoint. I think as much as we're putting the pressures on the coaches, and obviously now it's heightened because of March Madness, I think the shift and the fundamental change in how you administer from an AD perspective is so far beyond where the current construct is. They have to catch up. They got to get to where it needs to be. What you're seeing now is maybe the answer is let's go out to titans of business and leaders in business that understand how to run businesses more than just athletic operations, because now it's just more business than athletic operations. But it still behooves that person to have an athletic mindset in their staff and within the basketball and coaching staff to understand what the bottom line in all this is. The bottom line in all this is, what are you going to be judged on? Are you winning or are you losing? This is a win or lose environment. It's a competitive environment. And you need to have alignment all the way through. The second you get out of alignment, you lose. And one loss can beget another one, and then all the things we just talked about just start piling in. And once the crack is open, it just becomes a valley. There's a lot to unpack in this and what can happen. And it can all be taken care of in one decision, because that's where it's going to start and end at the end of the day. The guy that's going to be at the press conference, on the sidelines, taking the bullets, firing them away. It's a new day, and you really have to have people who understand. I think the higher, I'll leave you with this, Michael. I think the highest level programs that can afford to pay and get the best players, and by and large, you're seeing that's the same ones every year. Still Texas, right? The second most important guy in the basketball program right now is the guy that's running everything behind the scenes. It's Oz. It's the guy behind the curtain. And that trust level behind the head coach, and that guy is almost a senior level head coach, ex-head coach, all-knowing, all-powerful guy that doesn't care about getting the credit, that just wants to put you on a pedestal to make sure the program keeps going, and thrives in one thing and one thing only: hating to lose. I hate to lose. I love to win, but winning's the expectation. I hate to lose. And I don't care. I was almost uncomfortable when we won. And you'll see this in the first time we beat, the only time we beat Gonzaga. I want no part of that. I'm more on the Jay Wright side than I am on the Jim Valvano side. And what I mean is the celebration at the biggest stage. Even though you're the bridge, you funnel that, it's about them. I'm saying that because there needs to be another guy behind now that really nobody knows about or doesn't need to know about that's making that possible. I think it's a huge part of what Carolina is missing right now. And I'm not talking about a GM. I'm not talking about give this guy a title here and there. I'm just talking about a guy who gets it, who understands it, who can go on that side of the line, on this side of the line, but just stays right behind his own line to put you guys all in a position to thrive.
Michael Berard, Managing Director Investments with the Founders Group at Stifel, works with a select group of high net worth individuals and institutions to develop and implement investment plans tailored to their specific objectives and risk tolerances. If you are interested in highly personalized, well-researched guidance and outstanding personal service, you can contact Michael at 984-364-2002. That's 984-364-2002. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
Skip the traffic and ride straight to the hardwood with NC by Train. It's basketball season in the Triangle, and whether you're heading to see the Wolfpack, Blue Devils, or Tar Heels, you can leave the parking headaches behind. Enjoy comfortable seats, easy boarding, and fast, reliable service that gets you close to campus for every tip-off. Rivalry nights, conference showdowns, and all the magic of college hoops. NC by Train, the smarter, smoother way to get to the big games. Book your trip now at ncbytrain.org. Make it train.
Okay, so let's talk about the guy behind the curtain, whether that's Steve Newmark, the new AD, who will be making his first hire in his college athletics tenure after years of being a NASCAR executive and a very strong attorney, great negotiating skills. But you also have Jim Tanner in there. Jim Tanner was just hired to be the GM. He was handpicked by Hubert Davis. Bubba Cunningham participated very heavily in that selection process, but it was Hubert's call to bring Jim Tanner in. And Jim Tanner has that title of executive director of basketball and also the general manager. So you're probably not going to get rid of him right away, or do you? How much is the general manager tied to the head coach in college as opposed to how it would be in the NBA, where the head coach basically works for the general manager?
Yeah, it's definitely not the same hierarchy right now. It's not set up that way. Not yet, at least. Coaches hiring their own general managers now. It's reverse engineered. So they're more or less an assistant coach, but they hold a higher title and more autonomy to make decisions. So in that sense, you're tethered to the head coach, unless the AD puts you in that position to help the coach he hired. But I will say this, that GM and that head coach need to be in lockstep for a lot of reasons right now. And I don't envy the assistant coaches who are also serving dual roles as GMs. You cannot do that. There's too much at stake right here. That GM, and again, I'm going to brag on the coaches that understand what we can do for them. We buy them time back at layup. We take time off their hands that's just busy work to eventually help them make decisions from a position of strength. We do that year round. These evaluations are ongoing. These fits are ongoing because your team changes. Your season may change. Players may change. It's not one size fits all. And it's not panic at the disco when the music comes on. It's let's make sure we're playing the same tune all year long. And we're prepared, right? You're always prepared for what may happen. And then obviously a little bit of luck and preparation, and the opportunity comes to pounce on it. We can go back and dissect the decisions that Carolina made on their roster till the cows come home. So Henry Visar was thrown away by Arizona. Literally, I remember talking to Tommy Lloyd about this summer. We don't want him. You don't think he's good enough. So you got an elite level potential national championship Final Four coach saying, here's this 7-footer that we don't even want.
Very much.
Evans has an unbelievable run with Colorado State and a really good end of the season, and you get drawn to the magnetism of that, and without putting any effort into really going into the fit for him in the system and him with other guys in the system. See, this is the thing that I think is missing, Michael. And I remember doing this at UCLA when I had the board up, and it was every day, roster this, roster that, this guy, you got your depth chart. And I remember having this conversation with our assistants too when Russell Westbrook's name popped up on the board. And look, we don't need another guard. I'm like, hold on a second now. I'm not saying we need another guard. But what if that's gone? Oh, crap. What if that's gone? Oh, shoot. Yeah, that's the genesis of all this. You need to simulate every possible scenario and how to have an answer for that to sustain the excellence. All I've done is taken that, what happened to UCLA to the tune of 3 straight Final Fours, and now the technology that's available, and put it together to give every program that we work with a chance to do this every day. And then the point that I'm making about Kyan, is he a good player? Yeah, pretty good player. Was he good at Colorado State? Yeah, he was good. Just Tommy Lloyd didn't think Visar was good at Arizona. He's good at Carolina. Could Kyan have been good at Carolina? I don't know. But was there any real thought process that went into it? I'm not picking on him. Just using that as an example, because obviously for whatever that was, it didn't really happen this year at Carolina. Whether that was because he got outplayed or not is irrelevant. When you're taking free agents and guys that have performed at a high level, it doesn't automatically translate that they're going to do the same thing for you just based on their talent alone. It's based on who they're playing with. That is a completely overlooked function of this, I think, for the coaches. The ones that aren't prepared will look at those stats and they'll look at some film and they'll have their GAs doing this and they'll try to run numbers and data. Great. Take all that. Now what? Does he fit in this lineup? Does he have a lever in this lineup, in a defensive lineup, if an offensive one, a hybrid one, in a big, in a small? Can he play 2 positions? Like, you have to be able to simulate that out to help you make decisions that cause you to think, what if he's good here but not there? Is that more important to us than this? It's not all A's across the board. Russell Westbrook, okay, it's the easiest example, was a bat out of hell nightmare in high school. Athletic, downhill, crazed, just all over the court. Athleticism galore. Learning how to play slowly, growing into his body. Now you get into college, and transition defense is probably the second most important thing in Ben Howland's mind. So if you're a guard, it better be the second most important thing in your mind outside of what you're doing offensively. It was not for Russell. And 2 weeks in, he got yelled off the court, had no idea why. You know why? Because he was just running to go get rebounds. He's good at it, but it's not what's been emphasized. And again, you could see that if we fast forward and go back and saying he's not capable of getting back on defense now because he's not being asked to. And this is just a very granular example. But if you teach it to him, he's capable of doing that. So you can't just take it at face value and say, I'm going to call him out because he's not coaching anymore, and I know he'll laugh if he sees this. I remember sitting in the gym. I think we were at Westchester High School watching Losing Play, and Tony Bennett sitting next to me at Washington State. And they were recruiting him because Washington State would try to get in the margins of those guys. And he's like, I just don't know if he can shoot. And I looked at Tony and said, it doesn't matter. I told him, what does that matter? And then it dawned on me like, oh, it matters to him. So he's basing his evaluation, can this guy shoot? I was basing my evaluation on what was best for Ben. Can you defend, pass, and rebound? Because the other things we can teach you to do, and you have some inherent abilities to do, which obviously Russell proved he did. But my point is, everyone's lens is different. So when we do this fit modeling, we're going to take you and your program through the ringer and have all of this detailed public and private information about you, your lineage, what you care about, the history of players, everyone that worked, what didn't work, and compress it into one thing. Then we're going to go take Russell Westbrook and all the things that we've evaluated, we know, and the public and private and the thoughts and everything. Then we're going to put them together, and it's going to tell Tony Bennett, not a great fit for you. Great player, but not a great fit for you. It's going to tell Ben Howland, great player for you, because he can defend and he can rebound and he plays hard as hell. Can he shoot? That's still up to debate right now. Does it matter? No. You know why? Because we got other guys that can shoot. That's my whole point. You have to recruit kids based on who they're going to play with. And I go back to that board again. That is a living, breathing, everyday deal. The power that we have now is I don't have to spend 8 hours a day in the office looking at the dang board anymore, Michael.
Some places don't need hype. They already are the hype. Jimmy's at Wrightsville Beach is one of those places. Live music, classic surf bar vibe, and the kind of energy where you walk in knowing you're about to see someone you know, or meet someone you will. Great drinks, great people, and yeah, Cruiser and Cash, the Black Labs, usually hanging by the door or posted up near the bar like they own the place. Which, honestly, they kinda do. You come by to say what's up to a few friends, You catch one song, then another, and next thing you know, it's way later than you planned, but you're exactly where you want to be. If you're looking for a place that feels like Wrightsville Beach has always felt, Jimmy's is waiting. Jimmy's at Wrightsville Beach, the bar for everybody, down on WB. Live music, 365 days a year. Jimmy's, proud supporters of the beach life and the North Carolina Sports Network.
The Tar Heels don't know who their head coach is going to be. They don't know if it's going to be Hubert Davis because nothing has come down at the time that we are taping this, which is at 11 a.m. on Monday morning. And even if they did know who the coach was going to be, you don't know who's going to be on the team. Last year, 13 out of 16 roster spots as of ACC tip-off were brand new for the Tar Heels. So it was a complete flip. You don't expect Caleb Wilson to come back. I tell you right now, Henry Visar, his time at Arizona, his time at Carolina, he's probably at a peak right now. Give me the case for Henry Visar to come back at North Carolina and risk that and become the next Garrison Brooks or R.J. Davis, both of whom potentially could have made a lot more money if they would gone when the getting was good.
I'll tell you, it's a very viable option right now to be a fifth or sixth year player, even a fourth year player at $2 million for the year than it is to be a second round pick or even a free agent pickup financially. It's a very intricate balance right now to have the right representation and conversations candidly with front offices in the NBA to have the honest assessment. And I got to be honest with you, we've always said this. The NBA does not give a flip about the NCAA. So they're not going to tell you the right. They're going to tell you what they want you to know for their own good. You have to really be buttoned up and tight to make that decision. In the case of a big like Visar, that's a legitimate question. Because here's the other thing too. You come back next year for $2 million. I'm just throwing a number out. You come back to the tune of that, and you have a really good season next year, no matter who the coach is. You might find yourself into the first round next year, which is the golden ticket. It's guaranteed money. Now all of a sudden you're talking about over the next 4 years making 2 plus another 5 to 6 guaranteed, and in the next 4 years you have $8 million. Your life is different, for sure, guaranteed as long as you manage it. As opposed to, you know what? I might be a first round pick this year, and maybe I'm a second round. That line has been blurred. It's not just come back to get better to get in the first round. Again, I go back to my past. Aaron Afalo as a sophomore was with Jordan Farmar. We went to the Final Four. And Jordan Farmar knew before the year was over he was leaving. This is a little bit of a hint into what I was talking about with Russell Westbrook and the protection I was trying to build in for losing Jordan. So we knew we were going to lose Jordan before the year. He wanted to go. He wanted no part of college. He wanted to go. Was he a bona fide round one? No, but he ended up get drafted. Aaron was so competitive. Jordan comes out after the season. Aaron's, he's coming. I'm coming out. And we're like, oh, crap. Aaron goes through this process that I'm talking about. And at the time, it might have been Stu Jackson. Stu Jackson might have been in that position to assess and give an assessment of where you're at relative to his intel. So I remember being in Ben Howland's office with Aaron and Chris Carlson, and the report comes back. And we're going to give Aaron the lowdown on whether he's going to be a first-round pick. Because at that time, you don't be a first-round pick, you probably should come back. He says, okay, this, that, the other, this skill, that skill. Possible NBA comparison, Raja Bell. And Aaron looked like he was beside himself. He's like, Raja Bell? And I'll never forget this. I looked at him, like the tone of his voice, he was so pissed. And he's like, F that. Kobe, what are you guys talking about? I'm comparing myself to Kobe. You're telling me I'm Raja Bell? Screw it. If that's what they think now, I'm coming back and I'm going to be better than that. He rolled the dice, took us to another Final Four, ended up having a nice career. Was he Kobe? No. Did he think he was? Yes. That's what made him a great competitive college player. Was he close to Raja Bell? Probably. I don't know. My point of the whole thing is the decision-making process of guys on the fence. In the case of Visar, I think it's a real bona fide choice to come back and what he's proven he can do here and at this level to be a potential first-team All-ACC guy, get $2 million, have a great season. Look, here's the other thing that comes in this too, Michael. And again, this is where Visar's agent would call us. I'll give him stuff he would have never thought about before. If Visar's agent called us up and said, hey, coach, I want to put Henry through a layup, and I want to do some projections here on a fit model on what the Carolina roster would look like based on this guy. So tell me the guys you think that they think they're getting or they've gotten. We'll put him into that roster. And then we haven't done this, but I'd be happy to do it. Where do you think he might go? How he fits in the NBA? I can do a projection of where he might fit just in general in the NBA. If you think it's a team that's telling him if he's there at 29, we're going to take him. Tell me who that team is. Are you getting the intel from San Antonio that they'll take him if he's at 29? Great. So let's do this. You engage us. We'll do a fit for your client. We'll show you what San Antonio, we'll put that together. Now you can go back to San Antonio and say, here's what we got. Here's what it looks like. Here's the projections. Does this match up what you got? And by the same token, you can reverse engineer this back to Carolina. And look, you could probably negotiate a higher salary at Carolina because of that. These tools that are available to these guys, they have no idea the power that it gives them. None. And once they do, these type of decisions, Michael, are going to be made at light speed and very quickly because they're going to be ongoing. Let's start with a model of VSAR and see where that matches in. So the decision's heavily weighted more than ever was before, but at the end of the day, it's still the same one. What's best for my long-term future? And what's best for the long-term future of VSAR may be to come back.
That's the calculus that is so tough right now for an athletics director. And you're either going to be a proactive AD or a reactive AD. My real question is really the only one that I have for Carolina's powers that be. Make the decision, don't make the decision. That's your job, not mine. But I just want to know, when you went into the Bon Secours Arena last Thursday for Carolina's game against VCU, did you think that you were going to have that conversation with Hubert Davis regardless of the outcome of that game? Because if the answer is no, then that's a reactive decision rather than a proactive decision. And that is one of the challenges that I have in observing right now as a former AD, trying to figure out who the proactive guys are, who are the ones that come in with a plan. And I want to say Nina King. I want to say Kevin White. He just hired Wes Miller at Charlotte earlier on Monday, and that is a dynamic hire. And Kevin is a basketball guy. He's going to be a great AD at Charlotte. Good for him. Okay? But the challenges out there for these guys right now, and for Steve Newmark, man, I bet he's wishing he was back running Roush Fenway's Keselowski Racing some days. Look, he's in his dream job. Everybody would say Carolina athletics is a dream job if you grew up in Chapel Hill. It's a tough road for him right now. And what's the patience going to be like if you're 24-9, 18-0 at home, and have 2 5-stars coming into your recruiting class and you get fired? I get the argument. But if that's the standard, brother, I will bet you right now that they could hire anybody in America, and it's going to be very difficult to put together that kind of a achievement in year one.
Let me answer your first question because it goes back to what I said earlier on. Carolina's up 19 on VCU. If your decision's already made, it doesn't matter. Like, you can't be reactive in that sense in a place like Carolina. If you've already made a decision ahead of time, then the game result is irrelevant. Look, you got to be pretty strong AD or admin, if you've decided that you're not going to hire Hubert Davis and Caleb Wilson stays healthy, or rehire Hubert Davis, Caleb Wilson stays healthy, and they get themselves to the Final Four. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that would be true or untrue. It's basically a 50-50 for all things we laid out. So as it relates to now, then you go through this massive collapse, even without Caleb, of a game that against a team that wasn't playing great, good team VCU, but not playing very well, and collapse to the point of a 19-point second half lead. I think the fact that there hasn't been a decision made to this point means the decision's already been made that Hubert's coming back. Now, this is the old, but you got to get rid, like Penny Hardaway. Yeah, you're coming back, but you got to get rid of your whole staff. However you want to paint that picture,
I
you
hate
need better
that,
support.
man.
But again, that's what's going to be fascinating in this is that if you do believe in your hardest of hearts that Hubert is the leader, all things equal and considered, because let's be honest, you got to think that Hubert felt some innate pressure in the sentiment that I brought up about even talking to a guy like Dave Nathan. Hey, let me help you out with radio because I'm here in town. We're Carolina guys. And again, it's not, I love Dave. I mean, it's just, that's how it is, right? That's how it's always been. Hubert was facing that as well. I don't know who Hubert wanted to hire, but he didn't hire anyone that didn't have Carolina ties. It doesn't mean that all those guys are right, wrong, or indifferent. That's irrelevant. It's the construct that he had to go out and build his staff with that he was given. Is that still the same? Or is he going back and saying, I'm okay with that. However, I might need to step outside the constructs that I was given when I first got here. But what I do know is there are a lot of talented people out there. And again, there's a lot of influence that Carolina carries. Look, as successful as I hope we are at layup, it's always going to go back to it started at Carolina. It started and was born in December of whatever it was, 2024, to help Carolina.
Yeah.
Whether or not that actually happens remains to be seen. But I'm saying is like, if Hubert is that guy and he can act, Roy thought he could coach. Let's respect that. Roy thought Hubert can coach the team. Doesn't mean he was going to be able to manage it right. Now it's just magnified with all the other things we talked about that he has to do. So we should hopefully get a decision for his own sanity and sake, but also for the sake of the program, because it's heating up in the next 2 weeks. And once that portal officially opens after the Final Four, it's going to be a frenzy. It's going to be goldfish in the piranha tank.
2 questions, and they're opposites. What makes Carolina a good job in 2026?
In 2026, it's going to start with what is their salary pool. If they're going to compete at the highest level, they're going to, and they proved that they were willing to do that last year. The problem is it got mismanaged, right? So it's always going to start with that. Now, these coaches, until there's regulation and collective bargaining, and it's going to start with what am I working with to be able to pay my roster? The other thing is, are they willing to invest in resources to support that roster properly? I'm not talking about keeping it intact, developing it, preparing for changes that are going to happen year to year. I use the past. We would always recruit on these cycles. 1, 2, 3, 4 years. Be prepared for a one and done. UCLA, Kevin Love, one and done. Even Russell Westbrook was a 2 and out. You got to be kidding me. We took him in the spring of his senior year, and 2 years later, he was off the roster. However, Darren Collison stayed for 4 years. Like, you got to have protections built in. That sentiment has been carried forward now to that's an everyday process, an everyday projection, a year, 6 months, 3 months down the road. We tried to have teams this year take kids in the middle of the season. Don't think that's not going to happen again. And don't think it's not going to happen under the guise of structure to be able to do that, because they'll finally settle on what the rules and regulations are. Until then, people are going to start pushing the boundaries, actually doing it. Charles Bediaco and saying you can't do it. Like, it's going to, you can't fault guys now pushing the gray area more than you did in the past when that gray area was clear. It's black and white, but the gray area was your compliance guy and your interpretation, and the coaches that went into that gray area, a lot of them thrived. A lot of them thrived at a high level. Now the gray area is the entire area. It's now, how gray do you want to be? Do you want to be this level of gray, or do you want to be the level of gray you have on?
Hey, I remember when I was hiring my coach. We were at the Final Four in Houston, and I'm sitting there and I'm talking to my basketball translator, the great Eddie Fogler. Love Eddie Fogler, one of my favorite people on the planet. But because of my background, because of the people I knew, because of the people who influenced the way that I thought about both athletics and basketball, I went right back to that. Coach Fogler helped me out. And he said, Mike, he said, be careful about talking to that guy. And I said, why, coach? He has all this and all that, because I still had a little fanboy in me right there. I hadn't fully transitioned into my AD role, Kerry. And he looks at me and says, just remember, you're wearing a white suit with white pants and white socks, and you're standing next to a big mud hole. And that guy's going to jump into there. He's going to do a cannonball, and there's going to be a big wave of mud that comes out, and it's going to get all over your nice white suit. He's going to get out spotless. So you better be careful about where you go. And that's the one thing that's always stayed in my mind from doing that coaching search back in 2011. My coach is still employed, and he's still the winningest head coach in the history of that school, because we looked for a fit. And it's not just now about the bag's important, but you got to get a guy that matches not the institutional fit, unfortunately. That's what you should strive for. But what you're looking for is a presidential voice or a chancellor's voice mix. Because at Carolina, the chancellor, Lee Roberts, is the guy driving this shit. Okay? Bubba was the victim of a coup d'etat in 2024 and survived it. But eventually he will be out and the new guy comes in. And it's so fascinating. Carolina athletics, I was talking with David Glenn. I really think that we ought to do a year-long docu-series, kind of like that movie Spotlight about the Boston Globe and how they did it. That's what the next year ought to be for Carolina athletics, because Kerry is the son of an AD, and don't tell me you haven't thought about this. Here comes Steve Newmark, July 1. It's his job. And he's got potentially a new basketball coach or one that's under fire that he stood up with and validated the suit. He owns it now. Okay. Then you've got a football situation where you've spent over or close to $750 million over the since 1980, the last time they won a championship. So that's a massive money hole that Dean and Roy never had to deal with. And then you got this arena question. Man, those are a lot of things right now that would make me, as a prospective head coach, I've been the AD, but you've been the head coach. If I'm telling you, yeah, I don't know where we're going to play, I really don't know what we're spending, but we just made the decision in the last 4 days to fire a guy who won 24 games and 18 at home and had 2 5-stars coming in. Do you want our job? Does any of that, all wrapped into one big burrito, make this a perhaps bad job or not the job it once was? Or do people really even care? That is a rhetorical question, but I wanted you to elaborate.
It's like I go back. New arenas, new ADs, get you fired. That's what coaches always went by. And it may not be as much of a new arena because it's Carolina and the brand is stronger than that, but it's a clean break line for you to bring in someone new to usher that in. Doesn't mean Hubert can't do that, but way out for admins to say it's what we're doing. There's a lot, by the way, that's not as easy as just saying we're building a new arena. It's going to be there next year. There's a transition in between. Transition period. The whole show we talk about that is going to be massive.
Hey, my tenure at Illinois was based in fact that the director of athletics side worked with at Virginia and for at Akron and Cincinnati, and then again at Illinois. Fired Bruce Weber, brought in John Gross at the same time, was going through an arena changeover where the Assembly Hall was going into the State Farm Center. And they were doing this massive renovation, but they kept it open the entire time through with reduced capacity. It was a real pain in the ass for not 1, not 2, but 3 years. Okay? At the end of that, John Gross couldn't recruit. It was a real mess and all that. His ass gets fired. Now Brad Underwood is coaching the Illini. And Brad Underwood is a hell of a coach. He's one of my favorite guys in coaching. The best compliment I've gotten in the last 3 years since helping co-found the North Carolina Sports Network is being told that I'm an anti-Carolina NC State site.
I put the hat on, man.
Hey, you know what? I'm just all about North Carolina teams, whether it's NC State, I got really excited watching High Point and Queens.
Well, when do we start talking about High Point?
No, we're going to do that later in the week. We're going to bring David Glenn back in. We're going to talk about that today. We just wanted to tap into Kerry's experience as a Division I head coach. He can give you a little window into what might be going on right now. But here's the one thing we know. We don't know anything. It's all speculation. It's all things like this. And it really is Game of Thrones. So if you don't understand that reference, watch Carolina and really see the forest for the trees here, because there is a fascinating amount of subterfuge going on behind the scenes.
This is the North Carolina Sports Network. From the high country to the Outer Banks, on courts, fields, and fairways, we tell the stories of the bold North State. Follow us on social media at the NC Sports Net. We're the exclusive home of The David Glenn Show, coach-driven analysis of football and basketball. A look at the past with This Was Then, Inside NIL with Court Vision, the North Carolina Sports Awards, aka the Pineys, and the Old North State Tailgate, where we are on the ground at North Carolina's top events. Our foundational partner is NC Pork, raising the bacon, raising the bar. Telling the stories of the bold North State. Experience matters. This is NCSN, the North Carolina Sports Network.